The build-up was Keir Starmer and Trump hate each other.
President Trump is notoriously thin-skinned.
Yeah, he knew he needed to be on best behaviour this week.
King Charles is the rock star.
So was it a showmance or a bromance?
This has been wall-to-wall on US TV.
They showed to the American people this is actually what the royal family do.
Yeah.
Harry still cast a shadow over this trip.
Harry and Meghan are stuck in this victimhood mentality.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive US Special, where royal etiquette meets American spectacle as the King finds himself right in the heart of US politics, celebrity culture and geopolitical drama. On Monday, King Charles touched down in Washington, D.C. for a blockbuster state visit packed with standing ovations, star-studded receptions and some very unexpected moments alongside President Trump. And our first guest is Harry Cole. Harry Cole, editor-at-large at The Sun, and we are here in your studio, your wonderful studio in Washington, D.C. Thanks for hosting us.
Welcome to America, Matt.
How are you?
I'm knackered.
Not
Not as knackered as you, but there are weeks when, you know, what's the phrase? There's a week where decades happen and weeks where we do a lot of work, yeah. It's one of those.
It's been a great week. Look, I've had a load of surprises this week. I'm surprised how much I like Washington, D.C.
Great city. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm surprised how nice the people are.
Yeah, you're in the South now.
And I'm surprised to find out that actually you are quite friends with King Charles, which we'll discuss. later.
I'd be not obliged to reveal the contents of my conversation. I'm going
to get it out of you later.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. But what I'm surprised about is how much Donald Trump seems to like King Charles.
The greatest king.
The greatest king. You know everything that's going on at the White House. You know everything that's going on in politics in Washington. Why does Donald Trump like King Charles so much? Because he's not polite to other people. What's it about Charles that has grabbed him?
So I think Donald Trump looks back at that visit, that state visit to Windsor last year as the sort of high watermark of his return to power. I think he was genuinely bowled over by the shock and awe, pomp and circumstance display that we put on for the Brits put on for the president. If you think about what he'd been through, right? He'd been booted out of office. He'd been shot at. People had been trying to jail him on various degrees of jumped up charges, and he nearly that famous mugshot. He was then re-elected. This time with a mandate that was, sort of unquestionable. And I think that moment was the high watermark of his return to power, where he was sort of brought right into the fold and given that, no one gets that reception like that.
Legitimacy.
Exactly, legitimacy. And I think he was really touched by that. So he wanted to return the favour this week. Obviously, we know at length that he had a long fondness of the royal family because of his mother, who was a big royalist, used to play tapes of Diana's wedding, I think. And I think also the late Queen reminded Donald Trump of his late mother. She was, they look quite similar. Similar stature, similar build, quite stoic women. His mother was, grew up on the Isle of Lewis, and I think that sort of bond is there. And I think the Brits have cleverly taken full advantage of that, and they've used that soft power, the monarchy to the absolute limit to charm a man who is very susceptible to charm, but also very susceptible to being very uncharming. So I think they've played an absolute blinder with that, and I think it's worked.
Well, there's some elements here because there's a couple of speeches. We'll go through the different speeches, the Congress speech and the after-dinner speech. But before I get on to the after-dinner speech, which I was in the room, okay, I'll tell you a little bit first. I was in the room, but just before we got the speech. Yeah. So I looked at the speech and I was like, wow. There's some jokes in here, they're a little bit
these may not land, yeah.
They may not land, but we'll get on to that in a minute. But do you think that the friendship is genuine? Do you think that Charles feels the same? Is it a real proper bromance or is it a showmance?
Look, I think Charles is doing his job, right? He has to do it. His government has asked him to do this. There was obviously some concerns around the timing. Was it the right thing to do? But once it's done, signed up, let's do it. Coming at such a crucial time. Coming for the king after what has been a sort of rocky start to his rule, right? I suspect, and you correct me if I'm wrong because you know them far better than I do. I suspect out of all the people they have to see and meet, at least this one's kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
You never quite know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yes, he's brash and they're so different, and he sort of pushes protocol to the limits, and but
the smiles within the people at Buckingham Palace the last couple of days.
They've been laughing.
They've enjoyed it.
And I think for all of the stuff that the King and the Queen have to do, and all the hoops they have to jump through, this is the top draw one. So I think whether or not they go for a pint down the Dog and Duck, were they not to have met in this extraordinary circumstances, I don't know, but I don't think you can fake those smiles.
No, I think they're walking away thinking job done, but I think they've also enjoyed themselves as well.
I think so.
Let's talk about the speech, because President Trump is notoriously thin-skinned.
Yeah.
If people roast him on television, on shows, he gets very upset about it. Is the King the only person, do you think, that can make these kind of jokes? To say, I saw that script and I was like, the joke about speaking French, I'm not sure if Trump knows the nuances of the Treaty of Paris.
And also, going to the White House and making a joke about burning down the White House and comparing it to the ballroom was pretty punchy, right? That's the deftness of hand that the King has, right? His delivery was brilliant. He was, with no disrespect to the late Queen, he's a far better orator than his mother was. He's been doing this for so long, right? He's been doing this day in, day out for decades, that actually he's pretty good at holding a room. But on that point, the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief, it's lonely at the top, right? Who else is there who is as powerful and as famous as Donald Trump? I think they're probably the two most famous men in the world. Probably Putin's got a pretty good crack at the third slot. But as leaders, who can talk to the president directly like that? Because everyone else is kind of below him. When the German, when Merz has a crack at him, he fires back immediately. When Starmer, upsets him, it's diatribes on Truth Social. But you can't do that with the King. So he's in that unique position where actually he had sort of carte blanche to say what he was going to say. And in Congress, he did it. He hit all his talking points on Ukraine, on NATO, on the environment, on religious outreach, on you name it, polar ice caps melting. There was something for everyone there. A little history lesson on the Magna Carta. But he hit all this. So I think in the evening, that evening speech was time to be a bit more relaxed. But also there were messages weaved into those jokes.
I like the King of Canada.
I am the King of Canada as well. Don't leave Canada alone. Leave Greenland alone, frankly. But then, even with the bell, the great gift of the bell, imagine being the official who found that, right? It's golden. It says Trump in giant letters. It will fit perfectly in the blinged up Oval Office. And he was able to make that joke, and especially at a time when we have been falling out and, Starmer and Trump have been at loggerheads and they have been, firing barbs at each other. That lovely line where he said, you know what, if you need us, just give us a ring, as in ding ding, very boom boom, very funny, but also subtle point of you don't have to shout, right? We're mates. Give us a call. Like, we can do this stuff behind the scenes. We don't need... And just like every little detail of that, I was really impressed. You and I both know how much work has gone into this, having spoken to the people who've been working on this stuff for months. It's taken up every bit of royal bandwidth and a lot of political bandwidth as well. The embassy here in DC have been flat out on it. The palace have been flat out on it. And these aren't big, massive teams, right? And you can see why they were so flat out on it, because, I can't think of a moment this week where something's landed a bit flat.
No, 100%. You talk about landing a bit flat. What's it like in the White House then? What's it like with Team Trump? Did they listen to those jokes? Did they get the jokes? Were they offended by them? There was a risk they could have been, but did they all land and they were talking about joking?
I think, the French joke, speaking French, it was kind of funny, but again with a bit of a serious point, as in, learn your history. Look, the president was delighted. He loved it. I think he kind of, everyone's like, oh, he didn't get the jokes. That's if he got the jokes, he'd be angry. People love to project onto Donald Trump. I think he knows what was going on. He knew he needed to be on best behaviour this week. He knew this was bigger than, this was just bigger than his petty rows with Keir Starmer. So, and he was on good behaviour. He was in his sort of normal. He was in his sort of charming mode. So look, they're happy. They're really happy with how it went. Again, it goes back to that state visit in Windsor, when you just have to go on their Instagrams, the White House staff Instagrams and Twitter accounts, and they're still posting pictures from that visit. They still see that thing. You had all of Donald Trump's closest aides, sharing kind of Oscar-style selfies backstage at the state dinner, all loving the dressing up in white tie. This wasn't just for the president. This was for the entire administration, and they had I'm allowed to swear on your show? I swear on my show.
We can bleep
They
it.
had a bloody great time.
Yeah. That's good enough.
You know what? It's that kind of thing. Britain can do that in a way that just other countries, maybe the French a little bit, but other countries just don't. And
who was it bigger for, Harry? Was it bigger for President Trump to have his moment with the King, or was it bigger for the King to go over and sort out Starmer's mess?
I think it was half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. I think it was Trump obviously loved his moment, and you saw the display he put on the South Lawn, the flyover of the F-35s. You saw how much they thought they put into that. They decked it out. They cleared the South Lawn for days. Donald Trump wasn't even able to fly his helicopter to Virginia to take it to Maryland when he flies down to Miami each weekend for about a couple of weeks because they were preparing the South Lawn for it. They didn't want the helicopter messing it up. So
they were still building the ballroom. So I was there. You were there
silently
as well.
building
and the crane was there.
The crane, the ballroom never sleeps. Look, this was important. This was important for the British government, no doubt about it. Starmer made a very wise decision to steer clear. Yvette Cooper stepped right back. It was actually interesting that the ambassador played a far more prominent role than the foreign secretary in the visit. It was very, very important for the government that this went right, and I think it was important for the King that it went right. In the fact that, as I said, this has been a rough old start to his what do we call it? Reign. Yeah, of course. I'm tired. Sorry, I am tired. His reign, and this is going to be a big one. It's 250 years. This has been a trip. 5 years in the planning. This planning for this trip started when his mother was alive. She came here, 25 years ago for the 200th. No, it must be 50 years ago for the 200th. 76. 1976. She came for the 200th. So this date has been in the diary for a long time, and it needed to go well. And it wasn't. It was just circumstance that it was coming at this unfortunate time that the special relationship, quote, is at its lowest ebb in perhaps 70 years. But this needed to go well for the American people as well. And I thought actually, to get onto it, but the scenes in Virginia yesterday. Yeah,
we'll get on to a bit of the actual royal events, the actual away from the politics, actually being royals, being working royals. What about the Congress speech? Because that was a little bit more serious. I was there, and there were standing ovations, because there normally are standing ovations at those kind of addresses, right, in Congress. But not all of them got up at certain times.
So they briefed it was going to be 20 minutes, and then it was like 20 minutes without, and it ended up being 37 minutes because they were up and down like yo-yos. Look, I know for a fact that speech went through multiple drafts. You can see the bits that the government stuck in about increasing defence spending and growth. The most dreary bits of the speech were clearly the bits that Starmer got his mucky little fingerprints
the King put in the nature one, because I do remember only half of the people stood up for when it was State of the Environment.
But I thought it was really interesting. I mean, you don't often get a philosophical sort of ground. I mean, I've listened to so many bad political speeches over the years that, you go, right, okay, here's the bit that they've briefed out, and here's the note they want to hit. He sewed that speech together so beautifully that actually he was punching, but it was a little bit like watching Muhammad Ali, because it was just it moved so quickly that actually by the time he went, ooh, that was a bit spicy, he'd moved on very deftly to something else. And so it actually flowed, and there was something for everyone. The bit about checks and balances on power, no one knows more about checks and balances on power than a British monarch, was obviously loved by the Dems. They thought, he's having a go about, and he was talking about, but in a broader sense. It wasn't jabby like finger wagging. It was sort of broader and punchier than that.
Was it too political in parts?
Because no, I don't think so. Because it wasn't capital P political. Okay. The King can be political.
But he's a hereditary monarch. 250 years ago, America got rid of a hereditary monarch. Was there any flavour in the White House that maybe was a little bit too much?
No, because there was that amazing moment where the King of England, the direct descendant, the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of George III, said in that speech, and this was my moment of the week, and he said, the founding fathers were rebels with a cause. And you just go, I mean, wow. I mean, that's basically the King going to Congress, which was the direct descendant, what were we in, the 119th Congress? The first Congress, the ones that told his his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather to do one. And he was there and said, you know what, you guys were kind of right. You guys had a point. And that came off the back of Trump's speech earlier in the day, which was also very philosophical, where he talked about, freedom wasn't just invented in 1776. Freedom was, 1776 was actually taking the best of Britain, in their view, and running with it, and actually protecting the ideas of British liberty and the rights of man and the rights of the individual and the rights of freedom over tyranny. And actually, in their head, I think in their minds, actually, the founding fathers were they thought that George III was far more of a tyrant than he actually was. And they gave the President of the United States far more powers than a king has ever had. And so there's a sort of weird sort of fix where actually Trump is a sort of natural progression of the king. And then you had the Democrats, they say no kings all the time. There they were cheering the king. It was a bizarre moment, sort of suspended in this unique moment that you can't really recreate. This was kind of wall-to-wall coverage on US networks, especially on Tuesday with the arrival and then the dinner. And then yesterday, actually, the Arlington stuff. This has been wall-to-wall on US TV. They love it. They love the royals. And also, I think Charles may have had a bit of work to do because obviously they love the Queen. Charles has been seen slightly as, a slightly different, he had a bit of work to do building with the American public, especially with Camilla. Diana's greatly loved here. Harry and Meghan, they come and go, but they are household names in this country. But wall-to-wall coverage in a way that, I was actually surprised by quite how much coverage there was. And the journalists loved it as well. They went all doughy-eyed about it.
Yeah, I know, it's so funny, isn't it? This is the whole thing. I'll get onto this. This is the point I was going to make, because when you actually see the king, or meet the king, as you did, and we will get onto that.
That's all right.
But when you actually, you do change. I've seen A-list celebrities kind of almost like start shaking and get starstruck by the fact that they're talking to the king. Did it go wrong when Trump spoke about Iran and nuclear? Because he said, I'm trying to remember the quote he said about
if it was up to the king, he would have agreed with me.
Yeah, well, the king agrees more than I do about them not having a nuclear bomb. I mean, that's a sensible thing to say. No one wants Iran to have a nuclear bomb.
Given how worried everyone was about how this trip was going to go, and would the president embarrass the king, on the scale of things he said, pretty low.
Yeah, I think
for all the things he could have said.
I think so. This was a diplomatic trip, and diplomacy happens behind closed doors, not in these kind of Q&As and making speeches about Iran. And there was a really interesting bit on the final day when Trump was saying goodbye, and he said he's great. He's the greatest king ever. I was waiting for that line all week. He's got to say he's the greatest king ever. But it went smoothly. It went smoothly. It didn't go smoothly for Harry. He wasn't here, didn't come over, didn't make any noise. Yeah. Trump will continue to criticise Harry. Do you think that's uncomfortable for Trump to, he is the king's son, after all, but he's been quite disparaging, Prince Harry, not you. He's hit out him saying, there was an interview with my friend Robert Hardman at the Mail. Saying,
and he said,
boy, that wife of his, what she's done to that guy. And then I think it was said to a British visitor earlier this week, can you take him back? Talking about Prince Harry. Do you think that goes down well with the king?
Look, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, Harry, obviously, I think in any other circumstances, look, Harry going to Ukraine on the eve of the trip, fine, do it, right? Go and do your Invictus stuff, great. Go and talk to troops, brilliant. Don't lecture the US president about leadership.
Right.
This is exactly what the late Queen meant when you can't be half in, you can't be half out. That intervention was in direct contradiction to the agreements that made in the Sandringham deal. Go, but be quiet. So I think if that had come at any other time, I think they probably might have given him a bit more of a slap. But I think they just didn't want to give it the oxygen of criticising it. He was clever enough to keep quiet for the trip. Kinsey, I know who's joining us in a moment, has a theory that if it had been William here, then she would, it would have been very different. But there was one piece in People magazine, the latest vessel of choice for Meghan's wit and wisdoms, or that of her friends. But it wasn't like that. He was clever enough not to mess with the visit.
It feels like Trump has got the king, or feels like he's got the king's back in many ways with his wayward son.
So. I think so, and also, Harry and Meghan aren't as popular here as they once were. There's a bit like, who are you people? I mean, the problem is that the problem that Harry and Meghan have got here is that, fine, if you're either royal or you're not, right? So why were we listening to his witterings on Spotify and Netflix and watching her make jam? It's because people want a bit of royal razzmatazz. But then she goes to Australia and they start saying, don't call me Duchess, call me Meg. Call me Meg. And it's like, well, no. What's the point? If you're Meg, you're just Meg. You're either the Duchess or you're not. So they're in a real quandary at the moment. And you know what? Their decreasing half-life is incredibly rapid. And I think, they would have been sitting in Montecito, steaming, I suspect, watching all of that glory, all those glorious scenes. And
do you think? Because I have a theory that the later engagements on the final day, and also New York. We went to New York, we went to 9/11 Memorial, and to Harlem, and to all sorts of great stuff.
And Sarah Jessica Parker and Lionel Richie.
But the charities, the King's Trust charity that the King went to there with Lionel Richie, and all the events they went to, the community events, they showed to the American people, or I think they were hoping to show to the American people, this is actually what the royal family do. Not appearing on Netflix. Not slagging off your family.
No, exactly.
How did that go down, do you think?
I mean, that's what goes back to my point. I think they would have looked at that and gone, "Argh." I would think it would have grated because, it's not sitting there making, here's how to make a, charcuterie board out of, whatever sustainable ham, whatever it was she prattles on about all the time. No, I thought Virginia was really cool, actually. Obviously, the Commonwealth of Virginia was where the revolution started, right? And to see them queuing around the block, lines, I got told off for saying lines, I've been in America too long, queues round the block to see him. Hundreds and hundreds of people turned out. I think there was really nice images. There was a lovely story about the Royal Advance team because they were driving to Shenandoah, which is a couple of hours up out of town, national park. They had to find a gas station, petrol station for your.
Oh, thank you for translating.
They had to find a gas station for the King or the Queen to have a comfort break. And they found this woman, this Virginian woman, and they said, well, we need special visitors coming. And apparently she burst into tears when she found out that the King of England might
use her throne,
to put it so delicately, and was so overwhelmed that she sobbed.
I was astonished. I was hoping for more walkabouts. I was hoping for more engagements.
That was the security thing. So
the security
that was the problem. I mean, obviously, Trump's security is obviously mental. This is the third assassination attempt on him in as many years on Saturday night. The Ring of Steel is, it went up properly, and it was even bigger than when Bibi, or even bigger when Zelensky's in town. You couldn't really get within 3 or 4 blocks of the White House. So that was, you can kind of see why they had to do it. They had to do the same at Windsor, right? They couldn't have the carriage ride through the streets of London.
No, we landed on the Windsor Castle lawn.
That wasn't because of the protests.
Yeah.
That was genuinely because they could not protect him.
Yeah.
It is there is a near constant daily threat to the president's life. So it was all quite sterile. And they put 1,000 people on the South Lawn, but they weren't like punters. They were they were journalists and things. So I thought Virginia was important because actually it was the only time, and obviously Trump wasn't there, it was the only time they could really get out and meet real Americans.
Tangible benefits, because we're talking about, the renew and reaffirm the special relationship and show off the royal soft power stateside. There was a whiskey deal.
Hell yeah.
Is that something to celebrate? There's just one little whiskey deal?
No, but this is seriously important.
I have to explain it to some of the viewers or whatever. So Trump announced it on Truth Social, just as the King and Queen were leaving. He said that the King and Queen got me to do something that nobody else was able to do, and you could explain what it means. And then I was actually surprised that the palace then issued us a statement, because Trump might change his mind tomorrow, saying that the King sends his sincere gratitude and he's raising a dram to the President's thoughtfulness and generous hospitality.
I think the Buckingham Palace putting a statement out makes it much harder for the King to change his mind. So quite clever bit, quite a deft move there.
Just some quick questions for you.
Do you want to hear any more about whiskey, or should we?
I feel like I need some whiskey after listening to that. But just some quick questions. Do you think that the King succeeded in saving the special relationship?
I think the special relationship is deeper and stronger and broader than any one individual, but by God, did he do a good job pointing that out.
Is Trump genuine in his love for the King and the royal family?
Yeah, I think so.
And is Charles genuine in his friendship towards Trump?
Put on a good show.
Do you think this will help? Do you think Charles has helped mend the Trump and Starmer relationship?
I think the Trump and Starmer relationship is fairly balked as it is. I think once the president decides that you're a loser, you're a loser. Look at what happened to Theresa May. I think that was going to take some building. I think Donald Trump's looking at the same polls we're looking at. Right. He's a ratings guy. you know, if he thinks you're a winner, he likes you. If he thinks you're a loser, and he thinks there's no point in, you know, he thinks you're not going to be here in a year's time. What's the point of mending that bridge? So
will we need Trump? Will we need Charles again?
We always need Charles. Where should we send him next?
And finally, me and you had the pleasure of the garden party. This was on the first night, beautiful sunny evening. There was lots of celebrities there, including you, Harry. And at one stage, I was running around with my notepad.
You
I was
were
working
on pool
with my
duty,
notepad on pool duty, filing all sorts of wild and wonderful quotes. I looked over my shoulder and I saw you having a little chat with the king. Can you tell us what you chatted about?
Matt, I actually didn't tell you this because I wanted to save this for the moment. I was actually talking about you. I said I was very kindly introduced by the sexy equerry. Johnny.
Oh, he was a star on this
Lieutenant,
trip, by the way.
I've got a lot of questions from local girls about Johnny. So they were coming down, and the ambassador actually knew it was my 40th birthday. So he sort of gave me a sort of wink, and said, "Get over there." And they sort of brought him over, and the ambassador introduced me and said, "Your Majesty, this is obviously Harry." Good Harry. He didn't say that. No, but he said to me, "It's Harry's birthday." Yeah. So he wished me many happy returns, and then he said, "Well." He sort of said, "Well, shouldn't you be working? Like, if you work for the newspaper?" And I said, "Well, actually, you can see it in the picture. I'm pointing. I'm actually pointing at you."
Oh wow!
And I said, "We've got no, don't worry. Matt Wilkinson's on pool duty." And he went, "Oh, of course." Yeah.
Well, he knows me well.
Of course he does. Yeah.
We chat all the time.
Actually, I spent most of my time talking to the king, talking about you.
Oh, that makes me feel
I didn't get a plug for Royal Exclusive.
I was so jealous that you'd had a tete-a-tete.
I'm sure he doesn't miss an episode.
All right, but he was on good form.
He was good form.
Right.
He had a very stiff drink in his hand, and so he should.
All right, whiskey.
No, from what I was pretty close. It smelled more of a martini flavour.
He's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Harry. It's been a pleasure coming to visit Washington, and thanks for being a great host. It's been a great city.
Come again.
A great time.
And I hope you like my studio.
And my next guest is Kinsey Schofield. Welcome, Kinsey. Thank you for hosting our royal family in your wonderful country this week. We've had a wonderful time.
Thank you. I take full credit. I feel like my enthusiasm is infectious, and the president was like, "Sure, why not?"
You must have had a quiet word of him or something like that at some stage. But honestly, there was a wonderful reception. Virginia was great with the King and Queen. New York was incredible. Although there was heavy security, and it did mean that a lot of people weren't allowed to get near the King and Queen. And the scenes with Trump were absolutely astonishing. I think will go down in history. And I've got a question for you, as an Englishman to an American. Do you think that America regrets getting rid of the royal family? They do seem to like the royal family so much. Trump loves the royal family. Members of the public, the media, everyone wants to come out and see them. Do they want their own?
I mean, jokingly, I want to say yes, because we do love the British royal family. But in all seriousness, no, we're pretty excited about our independence. 250 years later, we're still celebrating it. Like, come on, guys.
Am I going to get deported for even raising that idea?
I don't think so, because our current president does love the British royal family. If you would have said it under Biden, I would be concerned for you.
Yeah.
I would say we need to fix that and edit. But we worship celebrity here in the States, and in my opinion, royals are above celebrity. And so when you're constantly bombarded with the Kardashians and things of that nature, to have the presence of the king and queen in the United States is incredible. It's his first trip as the king. And, for the last 6 years, his son and daughter-in-law, who he does not get along with, have been telling us who he is, what his morals and values are. And this was his first opportunity to say, actually, no, here I am. This is what I believe in. This is my faith. This is what I pray about. And these are some of the campaigns that I'm passionate about. And it was his opportunity to define himself for the American audience. So I think that he is probably considering that this a success. And I think that there are a lot of Americans that are sitting back going, oh, I kind of like this guy.
This is a really interesting point. I've not thought this through before. So we talked about him wanting to renew and reaffirm the special relationship to save Keir Starmer's skin, basically, the UK government to save his skin. But also, was he, reaffirming the royal family's relationship with the American public after everything that has happened with Harry and Meghan for the last 6 years? Was this an opportunity for him? Oh, I think you've just pointed out, this was the opportunity for him to do that in the UK. Do you think it worked? How well do you think the King and Queen, let's not forget Camilla was here, how well do you think that they performed?
I think that they performed very well. I mean, his speeches were so lighthearted in some cases. I know he was very serious before Congress, but he made some jokes in Congress too that went over really well. But he was silly. We can tell he's incredibly intelligent based on some of his jokes. Queen Camilla, of course, looked stunning and was friendly and was surrounded by incredible personalities throughout the process too. And you are who you associate with, so the fact that some of these people did want their pictures taken and be around them speaks volumes. But I also would say if you went down south where I'm from Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas, and if you talk to people around there, they would tell you that they still think of him as Prince Charles who left Diana. So there were multiple, past perceptions that he had to shake, and I think he successfully shook them.
Well, he's a completely different man than he was in the 90s. He looks different, he acts different, he's got a new job as well. So he
got a promotion.
He's got a promotion. We'll talk about Camilla then briefly, if you like, because she often, it's all about the king, it was all about the king's speeches, the king's bromance with Donald Trump. But Queen Camilla was there, never put a foot wrong. New York City, where she met Carrie Bradshaw, so I call her the stage name, where she met Sarah Jessica Parker.
I call her Carrie Bradshaw too.
And New York City was Princess Diana's town.
That's true.
She walked into Princess Diana's town and held a couple of engagements, quite good fun. The gala event that I went to with lots of celebrities. How well do you think Camilla performed?
I think Camilla performed incredibly well. I mean, at the end of the day, what we see from Queen Camilla is a woman who is just as resilient as her husband, who we know is living with cancer and had an unbelievably packed schedule, and you couldn't tell at all, like he was a rock star. And then there's Camilla, who spent years demonized by the media, never said anything, never begged people to leave her alone, never went on television and whined about her circumstances. And so we're seeing how resilient and strong she is, too. She continues to show up. She's got a great attitude, and she's a force on her own. To my point earlier, you had Anna Wintour from Vogue and Sarah Jessica Parker and all of these celebrities clamoring to be in her presence, and that says a lot.
I'm told, I'm sure I can say this, I'm told that they did not struggle to get guests. Once they said we're coming to New York and we're coming to Washington and to Virginia, the people were queuing up.
I hate to go here, but this is my beat. On the flip side of that, back in Montecito, you do have celebrities that don't want the association with Harry and Meghan. Reese Witherspoon specifically, I was told, declined appearing on Meghan's initial podcast because she cares very deeply for Catherine, Princess of Wales, and she didn't want to jeopardize that relationship with the future queen. So I do think that it's important to point out that real royalty still attracts a huge and important and influential group of people. And Harry and Meghan, they've alienated themselves because their brand can appear to be so negative at sometimes.
Well, I think we may have spoken before about leading up to this. It was an incredibly important state visit, and Harry and Meghan often, when something is so important to the royal family, they pop up. They do something. I remember when I was flying to Boston.
Like a moth to a flame.
Yeah, like a moth to a flame. But this time, Harry and Meghan behaved themselves this week, do you think?
No, I don't.
No?
I love that. I love your delivery. At least there was a question mark at the end of that sentence. So all we're talking about is how exciting this trip is. I know you were there like last week. Or 2 weeks ago, we were so excited about this trip. What was it going to deliver? And all of a sudden, Harry pops up in Ukraine out of nowhere. Harry pops up in Ukraine, and he not only it's fair to say, we need to stop the war in Ukraine. No one likes war. We all want peace. But Harry stands up there and challenges Putin. He challenges President Trump, making it an awkward situation for his father, who has to come here and do a very important job. He has an incredible responsibility during this trip. And a few days into the official state visit, we all look at each other and go, gosh, that's weird that we haven't heard anything from Harry and Meghan. Hope they're okay. Should we do some sort of, check? Should we do some sort of I don't know. And up pops the People magazine cover. Harry making his own rules. Not only is it a People magazine cover, which I know you know, but you probably wouldn't say out loud because you're a very responsible journalist. People magazine is one of Harry and Meghan's favorite outlets, and they have a lot of friends over there. But he's challenging the rules that were given to him when he left the royal family. No half in, half out. He's saying, I'm making my own rules. Now, Harry and Meghan didn't talk to the magazine specifically, but in classic form, close confidants did talk to the magazine and stressed that the Queen would understand what Harry's trying to do. He's simply trying to live a life of service. But I think what you've just shown me is that it didn't work. Right. While they might have been trying to distract from the state visit, there are people like you that were so focused, and all you saw was this incredible exchange between our two countries and how meaningful it was, that maybe it didn't work. So that's a great sign. I'm gonna
kind of disagree with you, and I hate disagree with you, Kinsey, a little bit. I don't think...
All married couples.
Stop it. I think that Harry did not want to go anywhere near torpedoing this trip. I don't think there was any chance that he would even attempt to distract from what he knows is an important thing for his father. I don't think he's that stupid. I'm glad that he didn't. I'm going to admit that I haven't read the People magazine because I've been sat on buses, standing on fixed points, walking around with a notepad for the last 3 or 4 days.
Have you had a hot dog yet?
I haven't even had a hot dog. I've barely eaten.
Gosh, I love hot dogs. I've barely eaten either.
I've barely eaten, but I didn't see it. What was the gist then? His aides are saying that he's writing his own rules. I mean, tell me a little bit more.
Yes, the gist is that Australia was a huge success, and it's the new template.
I'm told that they're going to be unapologetic in repeating the Australia trip. Is it that kind of vibe?
Yeah, that's the vibe, and that they can still be royal without the titles. To which I'd say, then give them up. Like, that's one of our biggest issues. One of their critics' biggest issues is that's fine if you want to monetize your outfits, but you shouldn't be doing it as the Duchess of Sussex while squatting next to a child with cancer. I think that that's completely unacceptable. But the gist is Australia worked. They're no longer being paid for by the taxpayer, so it's none of our business. And this was a success for them, and they're going to continue to pursue it.
That's crazy, because what we've just seen this last couple of days has been a successful royal tour. We've seen soft power, we've seen glamour, we've seen intelligence, we've seen wit, we've seen charities being supported. I was there at the King's Trust Gala event. I mean, you can't compare the Australia trip with the US trip. It's like chalk and cheese.
I love that about you. We haven't seen the palace promote any of Queen Camilla's outfits for commission, which I think is important. Yes, she promotes designers that are important to her and British designers, but she certainly is not saying, and if you use my code Queen Camilla, 2026, then you get a discount at the checkout, and I get a cut. So yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting that you say that, because did he not realize that going to Ukraine when he went to Ukraine would not be considered a questionable move?
I think going to Ukraine was. I'm not going to knock him for going to Ukraine. He does loads of stuff with Ukraine and the Invictus Games out there, and he's been out there 3 times.
Was he there with Halo Trust?
The timing was bad. He was there with Halo Trust. The problem I find with that was the speech and the interview where he gave, where he spoke about he could still be a working royal. Yeah. And if that's what they're saying in the People magazine, that he still wants this kind of half in, half out, I think with all the distractions that you have at the moment, important distractions, the royal family have been in the United States carrying out important jobs. Maybe the King and Buckingham Palace are taking their eye off the ball, and there's a bit of a land grab here by Harry and Meghan.
Oh, wow. I would watch that episode of Dallas. I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. But if the King would have put his foot down in the last few weeks, if he would have reacted to Australia in any way, shape, or form, it would have distracted from the buildup of this trip. And then it would have created chaos around whether or not he was going to see or speak to Harry. The ignoring of Harry benefits them more than engaging them in a PR way, and I recognize that. And yes, I want him to strip him of his titles, and I want him to step in there and but he should have done it with Andrew, or if he would have done it leading up to this, we wouldn't have been talking about how important this mission was for him, because a lot of us look at this as the most important responsibility he's had since becoming king, and a great success. And I think at the end of the day, that's what he wanted.
I think it's interesting. I'm enjoying this chat because I think that the way that this royal trip to Washington and New York was so good. I think it shows the Australia trip and what Harry and Meghan have been doing in a bad light. It makes it look a little bit frivolous. It makes it look a little bit desperate. And I think that this trip was so good that I kind of regret almost writing stories about the Australia trip, giving it airtime and talking about it, because this was such a success. It just makes the Australia trip just look piffling, in my view. So there we go. Can we just return briefly to the state visit here? But we'll still stick on Harry.
Yeah.
Because Donald Trump did speak about Harry.
Right.
2 or 3 times, I think. He referenced Harry doesn't speak for Great Britain when he was talking about what he had said in Ukraine. And I think he'd said, Robert Hardman had been in to see Donald Trump, and he said, boy, that wife of his, what she's done to that guy. And then I think he joked to a British visitor about Harry, saying, can you take him back? I mean, Harry still cast a shadow over this trip.
A little bit. I mean, I do think for the most part, King Charles is the rock star as the week closes out. We did get a few Harry mentions. Any journalist in their right mind is going to ask or repeat what they hear about Harry on this trip, because Harry is clickbait. But he's not wrong. The woman you marry is incredibly important. King Charles is an example of that. When he was married to Princess Diana, what I think now we can fairly say that there were mental health issues that we hadn't recognized at the time. Mental health has evolved and we understand it better. She talked herself about postpartum after the birth of Prince William. But there were a lot of mental health issues that he did not know how to deal with. Diana was incredibly immature. In a way, she was selfish. So marrying the right woman, look at Will Smith and Jada, back to Hollywood, is unbelievably important. And the shift we saw in King Charles once he did marry Queen Camilla, and how more respected he was, all of the horrible stories about him, slowed down. It is important that you marry the right woman, and I think it's a fair. Trump's been married a couple of times. Some might consider him an expert on finally figuring out who you should settle down with. But I think it's a fair comment.
Okay.
She's made his life incredibly difficult, but she's also said, thanks to astrology, thanks to her astrology shares, the last 7 years of her life have been incredibly difficult. So,
I read this as well. Sorry, my head's been so stuck in the. What's this about?
On Instagram, Meghan shared a post about, she's a Leo, and she shared a post about how she is just ending the cycle of 7 horrible years in astrology. And you're like, well, if you do the math, that's like around the time.
The whole time you've been married to Harry. What do you think that's saying then? This is the first time I did see a headline a couple of days ago, and I needed to read back into that. What is she saying, that her life is horrible? California's horrible?
That's what she's saying.
Or is this a new start for her?
She's saying it's a new start. But she is also complaining about the last 7 years of her life, which is frustrating because she's made all of her dreams come true in the last 7 years. She's a TV host with Love Meghan. She got 2 seasons, a Christmas special out of that. She launched a lifestyle brand that was bigger and better than the TIG. She's friends with Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry. I mean, she has an incredible life. She has a beautiful home in Montecito, healthy children.
Yeah. Well, we often talk about Harry. Is Harry happy? Does he look grumpy? Does he miss his family? Should he come back? Should we kind of rescue him? Is Meghan happy?
I think Meghan is making all of her dreams come true. I don't think she likes being held accountable, which is what a lot of us do. If she says something that's not true, we bring up the receipts, and then she says we're bullying her. I think she has unrealistic expectations, but I can't imagine. Maybe she isn't happy because she gets these incredible opportunities and then they typically fire her. I mean, Spotify. But it's not like she has a shortage of opportunity.
I'm just not either sure why you wanted to share that anyway.
Yeah.
Why Meghan wants to share that out there.
Keep that to yourself, girlfriend.
I'm so glad I've not been reading anything
You're like,
about the
I'm
Sussexes
so
this
glad.
week. You're filling me in. This is great. You're filling my gaps in my knowledge because you're really helping me out. Should we talk about celebrities? Harry and Meghan are possibly celebrities. King and Queen are A-list
Influencers,
celebrities.
yeah.
What did you make about the lineup that the King and Queen attracted to this week?
I just think that it says a lot about, because you are who you associate with in Hollywood and in politics. I mean, in the Robert Hardman piece, what I thought was really interesting was that Donald Trump refused to take a picture with Hardman and his book until he skimmed through the book and ensured that nothing negative was written about him.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's clever, because you can get in a lot of trouble today taking pictures with people that say something nasty. And I mean, Robert Hardman might actually regret that picture after a Truth Social post in the next few weeks. Who knows? But you are who you associate with, and I think that it speaks volumes that there were people that, I mean, I was under the impression that certain people couldn't get it. It was the hottest ticket in town, the King's Trust event, and I mean, Idris Elba. The fact that Idris Elba was, when he worked with the Prince's Trust as a young man, and he was given this scholarship that helped him become the movie star he is today, he's remembered that. And it meant so much to him that he continues to work with King Charles to promote this, because he doesn't have to do that. He is such a rock star. He was people's sexiest man alive one year. But he doesn't have to do that. He could just go off and be a movie star and work. Luther is the show that he's big on, I believe. But he wants to continue to help the King's Trust build and offer support to other people, other creative individuals. And he wasn't here this week, but I do think it says a lot that he wants to, that people like him want to maintain that relationship.
Lionel Richie was there. That was a lot of fun.
He was at the coronation too.
Yeah, he played the concert, but he was great. He spoke to us. He came over and he had a chat to us, and he was talking about the King's. He was really gushing about the King's Congress speech. He was really clued up, with everything that was happening in the state visit, and he was saying how that's how friends should be able to talk to each other. You know, Britain, UK should be able to talk to America because we're friends, and he really supported the. And then he gave a wonderful speech as well, and introduced Charles. And there's a proper bromance going on there between Lionel Richie and the King.
That's hilarious.
Before the trip, we were worried obviously about Harry and Meghan torpedoing it. We were worrying about things, Donald Trump going off script. There were calls for both the King and the Queen to speak to victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. I was at a garden party and we were directed to watch Camilla speak to some charities. And I asked a couple of them, what do you think about this whole scenario? And one of them said, we respect their position. It's up to the individual to decide what to do. I'm told there were a couple of protests. A couple of protesters were seen, and there were still calls for them to meet the victims. Where do you stand on that? Do you think it was the right thing to do?
I mean, I think that there's just if people want to be outraged and people want to pitch a fit, they're going to pitch a fit. But this is an active investigation. I guess, and also I should stress, in the United States, it's the people verse. If you are prosecuted, it's the people verse. In the UK, Americans might not recognize this. It's the king verse. So if the king were to come over to the United States and engage with potential witnesses in an active investigation, that could absolutely blow up any possibility of prosecution, or it would just jeopardize the investigation in the case. So I don't think that people understand the logistics. There was no ill intent. The king is actually a very sympathetic person, especially around things like this. Queen Camilla, especially around things like this. It's about protecting multiple active investigations right now.
But did they do enough? I think there was only a couple of events where they met some charities. Did they do enough? Because it was all over the press that we had congressmen demanding them to speak. I mean, was it the elephant in the room? Is it still the elephant in the room for the royal family?
I don't think so. I think I was asked about it once or twice, and that's in like a span of 50 TV hits. I think I was asked about it only once or twice. So I don't think it was the elephant in the room. And I would also stress, having seen some of that commentary from political figures, how often do you watch those sound bites and think to yourself, that's a person trying to make a name for themselves through this international scandal? Now, somebody in Britain knows who this little person is in Washington that barely got enough votes, but they're there representing whoever they're representing, because they challenged, the King of the Commonwealth on this. So I know people will probably be disappointed in me regarding this. I don't think it was appropriate, this trip. If when all is said and done with and all the investigations are wrapped up, if the king decides to meet with them, I will applaud him. But it was not the appropriate time right now.
There were, I'm going to say more important things, but there was different missions. There were different missions, wasn't there, really? We spoke earlier about reconnecting with the American people. What were your kind of highlights of the King and Queen's engagements? There were quite a lot. There were, from all sorts of, ends of the spectrum. We had the 9/11 memorial. It was the first time that they'd visited that. We had the block party in Virginia, which was incredible. That the mayor, apparently, when she had been contacted by the palace about hosting this party, she thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
She deleted the email, so she thought it was a wind up. But there was all sorts of things. Queen advocating literacy, of course. They met elders from the Monarchan Indian nation tribe, which is very, very much a Charles thing. I mean, what was your highlight of what the King and Queen did?
I am unapologetically so charmed by the speech that Donald Trump gave, which I know some people will be unhappy with, but the man stayed on script, and it's really hard to get him to stay on script. And he was funny, and my favorite line was when he said that his mother had a crush on Prince Charles growing up, because I've studied a lot about Trump's relationship with the British royal family for a while, for a different project I did. And I've always known that his family, he grew up loving the royal family because his mother loved the royal family, and she had all these scrapbooks, and he's been a pen pal to the king. Melania talks in her autobiography about how she's been a pen pal to King Charles for years. So I knew all that stuff. I thought the crush line was so funny, and I loved watching Charles's reaction, because you saw physical, he was like, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I do with this information? And
we don't know how old Charles was either. We don't know if he was like the hunky 20-year-old guy that we see, and stuff like. We don't know if he was a teenager. What was he when
So I thought that was just so charming, and I felt like it set the tone. Once I heard that. Because again, there was so much tension around this. The buildup was Keir Starmer and Trump hate each other. The king has to come in and regulate. Let's hope to God that they will be friendly and that our countries can continue to have this special relationship and be united. And then the president got up there and was cracking jokes, and it set the tone for the rest of the trip. Also, there was a shooting days before, and we didn't even know if this trip was going to happen. And I do think that one speech was like, we're not going to fixate on the negative. Everything's going to be lighthearted. Everything's going to be positive, and that's truly the energy I felt after that. And everything was. We weren't dwelling on a very scary incident that happened over the weekend. We were focused on the relationship between our two countries and why it's so important.
The perfect phrase there was set the tone. Once Donald Trump told everybody, I like this guy, and cracked a few jokes, the court is such a way that everyone kind of falls in line, maybe, with Trump. Once Trump has told everyone that you need to welcome this guy and we like him, then that started the trip well for them, I think. So that was a very good, important point. Do you think that this is because you obviously know more Americans than me. Let's be honest, I probably only met taxi drivers.
And I homeschooled, so I don't know.
But is this the trip where Americans kind of really got to see finally members of the royal family being royal?
Yes, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're not going to see people lining the streets and losing their minds. until if and when Catherine and William come.
Well, that's my next question.
Okay.
You've jumped forward.
Nice
I was planning my
segue.
questions. Do you think, Kinsey, that Prince William and Catherine will be coming to the United States? I thought I'd surprise you with that question. I thought I'd just throw it in there and see your reaction.
Yeah, so I have heard that we might see Prince William and possibly Prince George, but maybe not Prince William and Princess Catherine. I would love to see Prince William and Catherine. I adore them. The United States adores them. We are really fixated on everything from their marriage to her wardrobe. Yeah, I got asked about wardrobe a lot throughout this visit, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not as invested in Queen Camilla's wardrobe as I am in Catherine's wardrobe. It's just, Catherine's appeals to me more. But we love her because she's youthful, she's gorgeous, she's beautiful. I'd love to know her hair care routine. She's a great mom. And so I do think I would love to see her. I hope that she does come. It's my understanding, well, I should say Richard Eden reported that President Trump has formally invited Prince William and Catherine to the United States. And I would love to see them. Of course, if Catherine was swapped out for George.
Well, there's this potential, because it's the July the 4th celebrations is the official 250th anniversary, and I think New York's going to be holding a big party. Is it holding fireworks off Macy's? Is that the big thing? There's going to be a naval review.
We love fireworks over here.
So there has been talk for months and months and months that William would go to that. And then that's ballooned into maybe William and Catherine, and then it's suddenly developed into all five.
Oh, I would
So paint
die.
the picture. What would happen if the whole family, because you go crazy in the UK when William and Catherine go out. What would it be like for Americans if they came over?
Oh my gosh, we would absolutely adore seeing the children. I mean, that would be a very historic opportunity for all of us to see the kids. And it would be very on brand for Prince William and Catherine, who have really gone out of their way to prioritize the unit, their family, versus chasing positive headlines because they were seen at cutting a ribbon somewhere. So I think that would be unbelievably positive press for both of our countries, but certainly for the United Kingdom and the British royal family.
So it's almost a warm-up. The King and Trump is almost a warm-up for Catherine and William to come
Well,
over in
the
summer.
King doesn't want to hear that, but I mean, I do think that he's the opening act in all reality.
Yeah.
We're here to see NSYNC, and that's the Prince and Princess of Wales. We absolutely adore them, but I just think that there is a little more enthusiasm. They have a clean slate. They have a beautiful. Even Trump said to Hardman while they were meeting this week, you know, Catherine is so courageous. She's so brave. She was sick. People said horrible things about her. You know, again, with the resilience, I hate to continue to use that word, but there's, and to compare to Harry and Meghan, but Harry and Meghan are stuck in this victimhood mentality, constantly complaining and explaining. And you've got Queen Camilla, who is torn apart in the media. She continues to show up with a smile on her face and do the work. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, I would be so resentful if people had said half the stuff they said about her. I wouldn't want to show my face. I'd say, you don't deserve me. And she continues to show up as well with a great attitude. And that is what Americans admire about the British royal family. It's the keep calm and carry on, to quote the king at the state dinner. It's the keep calm and carry on, and they continue to show up, and we see that strength. The king has cancer, and a packed schedule, doesn't slow down. It's incredibly admirable.
Do you think the King should have met Harry and Meghan?
No, that would have been a total distraction from the hard work that he
Do you think
put
that's where
into
Camilla's
this.
gone? Because Charles has gone off to Bermuda, and Camilla has disappeared. Maybe she's
The
gone over.
Wicked Stepmother of Montecito. That's the new Netflix series.
Just a few questions about, obviously this was a state visit, and it was all about the King and Trump. Let's have a quick chat about some of the speeches, because as I was explaining to Harry, I was at the White House and I luckily got hold of the script before, his comedy routine, I'm going to call. And I started reading it and I was thinking, are these jokes going to actually
Are they going to land?
Because they were nuanced. This was dangerous. Trump he's a thin-skinned, he doesn't like people mocking him.
Yeah.
How do you think that dinner speech went down? And do you think that Trump got the jokes, or do you think he enjoyed being kind of gently teased by the King of England?
I mean, I honestly am trying to think. I think that Trump was roasted on Comedy Central. Like, we have roasts. I think you guys probably do too. But I'm pretty sure, I know there's a Justin Bieber roast. And I'm pretty sure there was a Donald Trump roast. I think he does like being in those scenarios as long as he's in on it. I just don't think he likes criticism from without a warning or that's too harsh. I also don't know if he got all of the jokes. I think he was, because if I am honest with you, when I listened a couple of times to the speech to Congress, I felt like it was way too political.
Did you?
I thought it was something Queen Elizabeth would have never done. I felt like I knew a little bit too much about King Charles, or that Downing Street had way too much influence over it. And I thought that Trump would have caught on to what I considered some sly digs at the current administration and not appreciate it. But he was like, I loved it. I was jealous. He got everybody to stand up. So either he did not fully comprehend, or he was just so happy that everyone was happy and he wanted to keep that energy up, that he didn't want to go there.
I have a theory that it's a British thing, okay? If you are my friend, okay, and I regard you as my friend, I will make jokes at your expense, and you accept them because you understand that there's a friendship there. You only do that between friends, and I think this was a very British way of saying we can gently make jokes at your expense because we are friends. And I think that Trump reacted in the right way by not taking offence.
Yeah.
And I think it was the clearest indicator. I think just the nature and the tone of those quite light-hearted but daring jokes meant that there is a proper bond between like Team UK and Team USA. I'm not about to make jokes at your expense, Kinsey. I don't think that's appropriate on the show. But that, if I ever do, that's because, you know, it's
Well,
about
I
being
do.
friends.
I do. You don't respond to my WhatsApp messages. Can I just say regarding that, I was disturbed by Tina Brown's report that King Charles did not like Donald Trump. And of course, that landed right before the state visit. Tina Brown, Vanity Fair's former editor.
She was at the garden party.
She was at the freaking garden party. And then she writes on her Substack that she spoke to Camilla at the garden party, and Queen Camilla said to her, you know, I see you're still writing. I still read what you're writing. Which, if you are a nobody just consuming information, I think that you might take that as giving Tina Brown a little bit of credibility. And then we see Tina Brown pop up at the literary event alongside Queen Camilla in New York. So I'm struggling with, I want to believe that our two leaders really do like each other and enjoy each other. But Tina Brown's comments, I felt like there was some legitimacy given to them by seeing her so often throughout this tour.
So was it a showmance or a bromance?
I want to believe it's a bromance, but I wonder if it's a showmance. I don't know. But you know what? That's why we love royalty, because we never know. It's the mystique, it's the mystery, and that's what's so important.
Yeah, the mystique, and that's what gives us so much to just delve into and chat about and get excited. Kinsey, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a busy week. Right. Before we go, you're probably wondering what I've been up to behind the scenes all week on the state visit. And luckily for you lot, I've put together a little video diary of my time here in Washington, D.C. Just a warning, I was a lot happier in real life than some of these videos show. But take a look. We're just a few hours from the King and Queen touching down. They will arrive at a military airport just outside Washington, and then be driven by Donald Trump's security team across Washington to the White House, where they will meet Donald Trump and First Lady Melania. They'll have a private tea, and after tea at the White House, they will then go out to visit a beehive. The end of a truly historic day here in Washington, D.C. I joined the King and Queen, where they went to the UK ambassador's residence for a garden party. There were about 650 guests, including many politicians from Trump's regime, also Brits. Another big day here in Washington, DC. My bus is there behind me, where it's going to take me off to the White House, where we're expecting the King to be treated to a ceremonial welcome. We're also hoping to get some words from Donald Trump. He will appear on a balcony for the inspection of the troops, and hopefully some words from the President himself, which we haven't heard yet.
What a beautiful British day this is.
Right, I'm just leaving Capitol Hill, or should we call it Clapitol Hill, everybody? Because there was, we think, about 12 standing ovations for the King during his address to a joint meeting of Congress. It's the first time that a monarch has done it since the Queen in 1991. As you can see, I'm wearing my dicky bow because we have a date tonight at the state dinner. So we're getting back to the White House and we're expecting a little bit more fun. I think it's a little bit serious today in Congress. There were some big issues that the King spoke about, but we're expecting his speech at the White House for the state dinner to be a little bit more light-hearted.
And I'm sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own small attempt at real estate redevelopment of the White House in 1814.
It's 3:30 in the morning. No, I haven't been out all night. I had 2 hours sleep after the excitement of last night, and the reason up so early is because we're off to New York, where the King and the Queen will be spending the day. They're starting off going to the 9/11 memorial, a very brilliant moment for the Mayor of New York. If you look behind me, I'm actually at the 9/11 memorial. The King and Queen will come here later, and they will lay some flowers. They will also meet some of the firefighters that were here on the day back on September 11, 2001. Later, the King will go to Harlem and he will join a beauty garden, take part in a beauty garden, see a wall of lettuce. And the Queen will celebrate 100 years of Winnie the Pooh when she goes to New York Public Library. Right, I'm on my way back to JFK Airport to fly back to Washington. The day has been mainly bus, rota bus, but for the royal family, for the King and Queen in particular, it's been a completely different day because I've actually had the chance to meet members of the public, there's several engagements, and the King got to thank some members of the King's Trust at a gala at the end of the evening. Then heading back to Washington. I'm heading back to Washington, and it starts all over again in the morning. We are going to see the King and the Queen meet Trump and Melania one final time at the White House. They're going to go there, going to be bid farewell, and then the King and Queen will both leave for Arlington Cemetery. After that, well, it's a bit of a party time, to be honest. They're going to go to a block party in Virginia in a very small town. They've laid out the bunting, I'm hearing already. People have started drinking at 10 a.m. this morning, I'm hearing already. And then the King, his work hasn't finished yet. He will jet off to Bermuda for a few days where more engagements take place. Behind me is the King's plane known as Baby Voyager. The King has just landed here. He actually arrived very nicely on Donald Trump's helicopter. He was given a lovely welcome, red carpet, band, and he walked up the red carpet and up the steps into the plane there behind me and waved to everybody down on the tarmac, and he's just about to fly off to Bermuda to complete the second leg of the trip. But for now, after everything that's gone on, for now, the USA trip is finally over as soon as that plane gets up in the air, which sounds like it's about to do now. Oh, I'm already feeling nostalgic looking back at that. What an amazing week. And that's all we have time for on this US special of Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests Harry and Kinsey, and thanks to you always for watching. Remember to subscribe to us here on our Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news, and I'll see you next week back in London.